Forest dungeons, swamp dungeons, mountain, steppe. You see these all over Albion Online, but does the look of the dungeon actually matter for a beginner? Does a forest dungeon give different loot than a swamp dungeon of the same tier? Are the mobs harder just because it's rocky instead of green? Forget the guesswork. This guide cuts straight to the facts. We're breaking down the 4 main solo dungeon biomes, the mobs you'll typically find inside, and revealing what actually impacts your fame, loot, and survival as a new player. If you run solo dungeons, you need to know this. Let's get into it. Okay, quick recap for absolute beginners. Solo dungeons, often called green dungeons, are instanced PvE challenges scattered throughout Albion's world. You enter through a glowing green portal, fight monsters, defeat bosses, and get loot. Now, the biome just refers to the environment type of the zone where you find the dungeon entrance. Albion has several distinct biomes, and the dungeons within them often reflect that look and sometimes the inhabitant. We're focusing on the 4 most common you'll see as you explore beyond the starter areas: forest, steppe, swamp, and mountain. First up, the forest biome dungeons. Visually, these are what you might expect: lots of trees, roots, grassy floors, maybe some ancient ruins overgrown with nature. They feel quite alive, sometimes with shafts of light breaking through the canopy. Now, who lives here? You'll very commonly encounter heretics in forest dungeons. These are human enemies, poachers, binders, berserkers. They use fairly straightforward attacks, but watch out for their AoE traps and ranged binders. You might also run into keepers, Albion's nature protectors. Think earth spirits, axe-wielding primitives, and bears. Keepers often have strong melee attacks and some earth-based magic. Key beginner tip: forest dungeons are visually distinct and common in early to mid-tier zones. Get used to fighting heretics and keepers here. Remember, the difficulty mainly depends on the tier, like Tier 4, Tier 5, and enchantment level, like 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, not just the forest look. Next, let's head to the wide-open plains and check out steppe dungeons. Visually, these tend to be drier, more open spaces than forests. Think grassy fields, rock formations, maybe some dilapidated structures or tents hinting at recent camps. They often feel less claustrophobic than other types. The primary faction you'll often find lurking in steppe dungeons are the Morgana Cultists. These fanatics serve the demon prince Morgana. Expect agile melee units, disciples throwing dark magic, crossbowmen, and sometimes fearsome summoned demons or knights. Their attacks often involve dark energy, projectiles, and debuffs. They can be quite challenging. Key beginner tip: Morgana mobs hit hard and have varied attacks. Learn their patterns. Steppe dungeons might feel more open, but the mob threat, especially Morgana, dictates the real challenge, alongside tier and enchantment. Alright, time to get our boots muddy in the swamp dungeons. These are characterized by murky water, twisted trees, often darker lighting, and a generally damp, decaying atmosphere. You might find yourself navigating narrow pathways between pools of stagnant water. Who haunts these places? Primarily the undead. Get ready for skeletons, ghouls, wraiths, and maybe even bonecrusher giants. Undead often have slowing effects, life-draining attacks, and can be surprisingly resilient. Watch out for ghoul poisons and skeleton archer volleys. Key beginner tip: swamp dungeons can feel a bit tighter or maze-like sometimes. The undead faction requires paying attention to debuffs, slows, poisons, and avoiding their AoE attacks. Again, tier and enchantment are your main difficulty indicators. Last but not least, the towering mountain dungeons. Visually, expect rocky terrain, caves, snowy peaks in higher tiers, cliffs, and maybe ancient dwarven-like architecture or ruins built into the rock. These can feel quite imposing. Mountain dungeons are often home to a mix of factions, but you'll frequently see keepers and Morgana cultists sharing the space. Sometimes undead might pop up too. This mix can keep you on your toes, as you need to remember attack patterns from multiple factions. You might fight a keeper bear in one room and Morgana crossbowmen in the next. Key beginner tip: be prepared for a mix. Mountain dungeons test your knowledge of multiple enemy types. The terrain itself doesn't usually pose a unique threat inside the dungeon, but recognizing the different factions present is crucial for survival. So we've seen the 4 main biomes: forest, steppe, swamp, and mountain. They look different and often have tendencies towards certain mob factions, But here's the crucial takeaway for beginners. For solo dungeons of the same tier and enchantment level, the visual biome itself has very little impact on difficulty or loot quality. What truly matters more than the biome look are 1. The tier. A T5 dungeon is harder than a T4, regardless of biome. 2. The enchantment. A tier 5.1 green border is harder and more rewarding than a tier 5.0 no border. 3. The mob faction. Knowing whether you're fighting predictable heretics or tricky Morgana cultists within that T5 dungeon tells you more about the type of challenge than the biome visual. So, use the biome look as a clue for potential mobs, but always check the tier and enchantment level before entering. And that's your beginner's guide to the 4 main solo dungeon biomes in Albion Online. Hopefully, this helps you understand what you're diving into. Remember to focus on the tier, enchantment, and learning mob patterns. If this guide helped you out, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And subscribe to ZefulBlocks for more Albion Online guides, tips, and gameplay. Let me know in the comments which dungeon biome is your favorite visually, and which mob faction gives you the most trouble. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there in Albion, and I'll see you in the next video. ZefulBlocks out.